guitarist Dennis Tape, and I'm in my home studio, and I want to welcome you to Bargain Bin Amps. And this is number 14, because we already did 15. I kind of skipped one by mistake. So, welcome to Bargain Bin Amps 14, even though 15 is already out on YouTube. Okay, so this time around we're going to take a look at the Fender Champion 100. Now this is a 2x12 combo amp, and this is a solid state combo amp, and very much like the Fender X2, its first channel is basically a copy of a kind of a blackface Fender type sound, a real clean sound with effects and so on. And then channel 2 is similar, except that it has amp modeling, you know, and a separate effects section as well. So now the particular one I have is it's actually a red Tolex special edition. So it's a little different in cosmetic looks to the normal black Tolex Fender Champion 100. And the very first thing that you can say about the Fender Champion 100 is that it really looks stunning. I mean, it really stands out. It just has that classic, you know, Fender amp look, definitely. It just has that classic look with the, you know, the Tolex and the Fender emblem and so on. It's a really good looking amp. And it's not too heavy. You would think that a 2x12 would be extremely heavy, but it really isn't. And in many ways, it kind of reminds me of the Tone Master series. You know. Okay, so we're going to take a look at it here. Okay, and now this is a solid state amp. You know, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And it's budget friendly, you know. I mean, new or standard Champion 100 2x12 combo goes for about $400 new, and probably around $300, even less, sometimes used, depending on the condition. Special edition costs a little more. But still, considering amplifier prices, it's really a really good deal for a big amp, you know. Though, as I said, not too heavy, and you know, really good looking, and two 2x12 speakers, so 12-inch speakers, and 100-watt power amp. But solid state, it's not a tube amp. And very comparable in price to the Fender Super Champ X2 little tube amp. And that one has a 10-inch speaker. So I played around with a clean channel, and this is basically what I came up with sound-wise. It's that kind of, you know, it really, really, surprisingly, sounds like a tube amp. And you know, to get that kind of tube-like sound, I mean, I did have to turn it up quite a bit. It does get quite loud. To get that kind of low end, you know, that you would get from a tube amp. And just for comparison, I've got the little Fender Champ X2, so let's hear that. So as you can hear, it really does sound very, very close to a tube amp, really, on this clean channel. Okay, now, yeah, it is very, very close to a tube amp. Now you have to kind of tweak it a little bit, you know, and that low end that you find on a tube amp, it's very much still present because of those 212s, you know. And on this clean channel, you know, compared to a tube amp, the sound is really, really close. In fact, it just takes more, you know, more watts and more speakers to get a very similar tube sound that you could get in a smaller tube amp, you know, because it's solid state. But I think it's really good. And, you know, a lot of times when you play a tube amp, it has a special feel to it, you know. And then you switch to a solid state and you go, oh, man. You know, well, this one, while it's solid state, it doesn't feel solid state. You know, the feel is really good. I had no problems, playing it. And never once did I think, oh boy, this is a, feel solid state in the feel we're talking about, when you're actually playing. And I think the sound is really good. I'm really surprised. Okay, and now let's compare that back to the X2 again. I'll play the exact same thing. And to be fair, I put the X2 on the ground as well, which is where the other one is. So let's compare them. Here's the... Okay, so yeah, as you can see, you can get a really nice full sound out of there. Now to think of it, I'm comparing it to a Fender Super Champ X2, which has one single little 10-inch speaker. So, and it keeps up quite a bit with the Champion, with the 212 speakers, to give you an idea. Though I think really the Champion 100 kind of has a bigger sound, and that's definitely because of those 12-inch speakers. It does have a bigger sound. But the X2 actually comes a lot closer than I thought it would, compared to the size, for a single 10-inch tube speaker. Now let's switch over to the other channel, which I haven't really played with all that much. Let's check that out. So here's just one of the models is some kind of a distortion. This thing that gets loud. voicing on it. Here's another amp model. Let's just let's try that with the Fender X2. We'll do the same thing. This kind of. Here's a Fender Super Champ X2. here's another voicing. Well, it's loud. Another voicing. Here's a, I don't know what this voicing is. Boy, that's really small and thin sounding. Here's another voicing. Let's try that compared to the X2. It sounds so similar. Okay, so that's the X2. Right, here's another channel, kind of overdriven. Another voicing. And another voicing here. Yeah, that's an interesting sound. If you're playing with a drummer type thing, it's quite loud. see what happens if we take the gain down a little bit. Down some of the reverb on this voice thing here. Okay, took down the voicing quite a bit here. Okay, so there you go. There's the Fender Champion 100. And I'm really quite perplexed about this amp, because it sounds really darn good. Yet it's solid state. If it's a chameleon, it sounds like a tube amp. Very much, you know, sounding like the little X2. You know, and the X2 only has a little 10-inch speaker. And this has a 2x12, so you get a much bigger sound, kind of more airy and louder sound. That's one thing. You really have to protect your hearing, and these kind of amps, it's easy to get carried away and turn them up too loud, definitely, I've been doing this basically, most of the afternoon, and so I have to give my ears a rest. You don't want to overdo it. So here are my overall thoughts on the Champion 100. Never once did I think that I was playing, a solid state amp, really. I mean, it really did sound like a tube amp. I'm really surprised, and yet it's solid state. To do that, I really had to, turn the volume up and, really tweak it a bit, but it has some really good sounds in there. I'm really surprised. I guess I haven't really gone through the effects and so on. There's a delay in there and those kinds of things, besides the voicings. And what do I think of the voicings? I think they're pretty darn good. Some of them are exceptional. I mean, really good. Others, you kind of scratch your head and go, wow, why'd they put that in there? Because it can make it sound, not so great, I don't think. But a lot of the models are super useful and sound really good. I'm sure if you've owned that amp for a while, you could tweak it to your favorite settings, to be sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm really going to have to think a little more on this, because it's very interesting that it really does sound like a tube amp. Quite impressive. And I wonder, I haven't played a Tone Master. I haven't had a chance to. Fender's Tone Master is kind of like this amp modeling, trying to get real close to tubes, and I'm wondering how different it is from the Champion 100. Probably better, I would assume, but especially for the price. But I'll be darned if this Champion 100 really comes close. I'm really surprised. Some solid state amps, right away. It's like, oh yeah, no. You can tell it's solid state, and especially if it's not a good sounding solid state amp. I put this one up though as a really good solid state amp. Now, I had a Champion 100 once, and I turned it on, and well, I'll be darned if the power supply in there blew. I mean, I saw a blue flash coming out of it, and that was it. The amp was dead. So that's one thing to consider. I think the power supply isn't all that great in these. But if you get a good one, it should last a really long time, you would assume, Yeah, I'm kind of really impressed. Really impressed by the sound. And because you have those 2x12s, you can get, sound very similar to a really large tube amp, I mean, obviously they're, talking, deluxe reverb and those kinds of things, really expensive, $1,000 tube amps. And here you're getting a little solid state version, and it's pretty darn close. Now, of course, it's not going to be, but it's going to be darn close. I'm really quite impressed, you know, and, yeah, you know, I don't know, personally, you know, I mean, if I was, you know, gigging a lot, you know, I'd be real leery of taking $1,000 amp out, you know. Especially if it's to take it to the bars and things, you know, it's going to get all beat up and stuff, you know. Now for home use, especially like apartments and things, you know, yeah, I would still recommend it, because it's though it's a big amp, it's not all that heavy, you know, and there's something called a volume knob that you can turn it down to playing, you know. But that's, you gotta be careful with these big amps, you know. They can get very loud, you know. So yeah, be very careful of that. But man, I can't fault the sound really. You know, it comes so close. And some people say, oh well, the X2 is not a real tube amp. But that channel, you know, the first channel is very close, you know, and granted the reverb's digital on the little X2, you know, as it is on the Champion 100. But I mean, the Champion, or the Fender X2, you know, has that tube power section, you know, and one preamp tube. Whereas the Fender Champion has no tubes whatsoever. I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, if you're familiar with tubes amp, I don't think you'd be all that disappointed. I think you'd be quite impressed, really. You know, for the money especially, you're coming darn close to a tube amp, you know. Really surprising. Now, you know, of course they, you know, 100 watt tube amp is going to be louder than the 100 watt solid state. But, you know, the 100 watts here are put to good use, and the 2x12 speakers, because it mimics a, you know, fairly decent sized tube amp, you know. And I guess that's what it takes really for solid state to come close to the tube wise, you know. And believe me, I mean, I've played solid state amps where the feel is all wrong, you know what I mean? For those who played a while. Yeah, you play on it and you go, man, the feel is terrible on this. Here, I don't get that at all, especially on the cleans. You know, very much like a tube-like. Now, you know, granted, I play, you know, on the clean channel, I play clean. You know, I don't overdrive, you know, where the tube is about to break up and things, which is a lot of people's favorite sound on a tube amp. And that's, I guess, if there was a shortcoming to the Champion 100, I guess that'd be it. You know, where it's on the edge of that tube breaking up. Well, here, you know, that's probably the hardest thing, I think, for modeling amps and solid state amps to come close to. You know, is that fine point where, you know, it kind of, you're running that tube real hot and kind of pushing it into overdrive just a tiny bit. You know, and even then, you know, I suppose you could use the voicing channel and just come down on the gain, and it would probably get pretty close, you know. Now, is it the holy grail, you know, of all amps? Probably not. you know, you know. But it's a darn good sound, I think. I mean, I'm really, you know, you got to remember, this is the price of the little Fender X2, which is 2, but only has a little 10-inch speaker. And this has a 212. So, and the 12-inch speakers, they do give you a bigger sound, a more full sound, and a more open sound. You know, the little X2 sounds a little boxy because it's that little tiny speaker in there. You know. Now this is just a stock 10-inch speaker. I know people switch those out, and I suppose they could do the same thing with the Fender Champion, but it kind of defeats the purpose, I think. You know, if you're going to put that kind of money into it, you might as well buy the darn tube amp and get it over with. Now, for those on a budget who want to get that tube sound, you know, that would be a pretty good option. So these are very popular, and I think it's for that reason. You know, especially clean. It does sound like a tube amp. You know, and the feel is pretty good on it there, you know. Now all these little, you know, things, you know, the little Black Star, you know, the HT5 and the 1080 anniversary and so on, it has that real compressed tube sound, you know, and they're full tube amps. I mean, those are pretty good, but they're small. You know, I mean, you still get a big sound. And as I showed you, the little X2 with that 10-inch speaker came pretty close to the Champion. You know, but with that being said, you know, with the Champion 100, you don't have tubes to deal with at all. You know, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you can leave your opinions in the comments. And, yeah, you know, I mean, I've got my opinion. I'm sure a lot of you players have your own opinion. And, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to sap saying, oh, well, yeah, it's okay, but you should hear my, you know, whatever it is, right? You know, my original 1960 deluxe reverb, or, you know, what have you. And so, yeah, compare this $300 amp to your $1,300 amp. You know, and there's a reason why there's a difference in that price, you know. But in this price range, I would seriously try one of these Champion 100s, you know, and then see what else you can buy in that price range, you know. And one of them is the Fender Super Champ X2, which I love, by the way. I mean, it's so fun to play that little amp. And the sound is really big, you know. But as I started playing the Champion 100, especially when I turned it out, you know, when I first tried the Champion 100, I go, man, this is just another solid state amp, whoop-de-doo. But no. When I tweaked the EQ and so on, and brought in the reverb and so on, and turned it up, you know, it's almost like a tube amp, because you do kind of have to turn it up a bit, you know, to get that fullness, and get those 212s, you know, moving. And then it's like, I see why people really like this amp, you know, and how similar it is to the X2 tone-wise, you know, but in a solid-state version. And to me especially, but, you know, most of the stuff I play is pretty clean. And by the way, it takes pedals really well. In fact, I can show you here. I have a little H9 pedal. I'll play it on the Champion 100 here. Hold on. Okay, here's the H9. I've got a simple delay on it, I think. Yeah. X2. I'm a big fan of the X2. It makes you want to play, you know. And the Fender Champion 100 comes awfully close. Man, super, super close. I mean, once in a while I can tell, you know, that it's a solid state power amp. But with that being said, you know, it is so very close, really. You know, now, depends what you're doing, you know. I mean, if you're recording or, you know, practice, you know, or just in your bedroom or just, you know, like to play guitar, is fine. Now, in a band setting, you know, I think it'll definitely give you a big sound, especially if you, you know, tweak it correctly. You know, set the EQ and all that. And it depends what you're doing, you know. You know, if you're, you know, playing leads constantly or, you know, playing rhythm and things, you know. I think that the built-in models are very nice, you know, especially the distorted ones are okay. You know, I suppose, you know, if you have a OCD pedal or something like that, a distortion pedal, you know, definitely that'd be worthwhile to use as well. As I said, it takes pedals really, really well, in the sense that it, you know, doesn't screw up the sound or anything. I could see someone playing the Champion 100 in a loud band, you know, and maybe you can't afford, you know, 100-watt Marshall or a Mesa Boogie or something like that. You know, I mean, some of those new are like $3,000, if not more than that. You know, so for $300, man, I don't think you can quite go wrong. You know, and then when you make it big or whatever, you can, you know, get the amp of your dreams or whatever. But in reality, it's definitely worthwhile. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on the Fender Champion 100, and I'm really quite surprised, you know, that I would actually, you know, because I've been on a tube craze lately, you know, liking tube amps, and loving that, you know, Fender X2, and played a PV Classic 30 as well. Now, one thing I will say is, it gets pretty darn loud, you know. As you know, the PV Classic 30 is a real beast of an amp on that gain channel, and that gets loud as well. Now, is the PV Classic 30 better than the Fender Champion 100? I would say yes, it is. You know, but it's also, you know, twice the price. That's it, you know. So, I mean, taking that into consideration, you know, is it twice the price better? No. No way. You know, Now, so, okay, granted, some of the models in there are pretty crappy. You know, there are some that you're like, why even have this? But some of them are very, very good. You know, now there's also the thing that, you know, a cranked up tube amp distortion wise can do that the solid states can't. You know, especially as I mentioned, you know, before, especially on the crunch type things, you know, doesn't do it that well, you know, where you back off on the volume and that kind of thing on the tube amp. But it's pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah. So I would consider that Fender Champion 100 a really good solid state amp. You know, kind of reminds me of the Roland Jazz Chorus. You know, I mean, that's an expensive amp and highly regarded. You know, yet it's solid state, let's not forget. You know, now granted, you know, pretty much has, you know, one real identifiable sound, that kind of chorusy, clean sound. But, yeah, I would highly recommend it. I think it's definitely a worthwhile amp. Trying to think if there's anything else I can mention. Yeah, it's not that heavy at all. Well, I found the little X2 is probably about very similar in weight, believe it or not. You know, yet it's smaller. You know, so easier to carry around, I guess. But the Fender Champion 100 isn't bad at all. And I think it gives you a sound, you know, very close to the, to some, a bigger tube amp. You know, something like the PB Classic 30, I guess. You know, on there. Yeah, one thing I'm surprised about it is that it's not a stereo amp. You'd actually have to have two of them. And even though it's got those two speakers in it, they're not stereo, as far as I know. Yeah. I guess that's one thing they could have done on there. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'll check into that and see if it is. I don't think so. I don't think so. Even though it's got the 212s, as I said, you know, it needs all that to give you, you know, solid state, you know, tube-like sound. And it's quite interesting. I have other solid states, and they're 2x12s as well. And they have, you know, like I have one here that has Vertube technology, you know, virtual tube. And, well, I think the Champion is very similar. And they're both 2x12s. You know, so I guess you need a speaker, you know. But, yeah, I was quite impressed. Alright, that's it for Bargain Band Barville. Okay, that's it for Bargain Bin Amps number 14. The Fender Champion 100. And, very popular amp. You can find them either new or used. If you do find one, highly recommend that you try it. You know, I think you might be surprised. I certainly was, you know. I was expecting kind of a, you know, a toy or whatever. You know, I mean, I had remember a Fender Champion 40, and I didn't like it much at all. You know, I didn't think that it gave me a real tube-like sound. You know, and, I mean, what do you expect? It's a little puny, you know, practice amp. But this thing, you know, the Fender Champion 100 really comes close. Alright, see you next time. Bye.